Hey everyone, welcome to Lesson 3.1a entitled Relationships in Education. We're going to explore relationships and how they apply to the teacher-student relationship essentially, but working relationship, but also as a parent, as a caregiver, as a friend. We're going to explore relationships in a few different senses. But I'd like to introduce you to a story. If you click on the picture here, it'll take you to a really neat story about a goose and a young man. So if you have a few minutes, about 3 minutes, it's really a fascinating, interesting story. So picture each child that they come to your class or into your clinic or wherever you have interaction with children, that they have an invisible backpack or invisible balloons hanging over their head, or even apps, essentially, and to put it in a technological sense. But within these balloons, backpack, or apps, this is our emotional baggage that we encounter in life and how it impacts our learning. But I want to maybe take you to the balloon example and think of, to the level to which these balloons are inflated over our heads or deflated really impedes our academic ability and tells a lot about a particular student. So to think about it, what is inflating these balloons? What's keeping them inflated? Or what's deflating these balloons? Or what's heavy and keeping us weighted down in our backpack? Or which apps are used or underutilized, for instance. But within these backpacks, apps, or balloons are the roots, the secrets, or reasons for living that children have, and they're all nestled within there. And it's, again, trying to understand what balloons are we carrying around and what are we telling about ourselves. For instance, each balloon may represent a area of trust, or perhaps a deflated balloon might enhance or reflect distrust or mistrust of something. A balloon or an app could tell us that we are competent or perhaps incompetent with its use. We could also be displaying, efforts of cooperation or aggression towards teachers or other caregivers. So my question to you is, what would your balloons say or show about you? And how would those apply to your students? So in looking at relationships, I want you to think about something called mental models, which really takes us back to the previous slide of our balloons. But mental models are enduring beliefs and expectations that you have about what you like and what other people are like, in a sense. So think of it as students asking questions such as, am I lovable? Am I a good person? Am I worthy of other people's attention and care? But these mental models also represent students' answers to questions such as, what are other people like? Can you trust others? Will they be able to be there when you actually need them? Are they nice, helpful, or are they mean and selfish? And through these encounters and experiences, we begin to look at things and ourselves as well as people in different ways. For instance, I have this iceberg picture up here, and usually this is the surface level of what we just initially perceive about somebody. But based on their balloons or what is inflated or deflated, there's so many other pathways and surfaces that tell us more about who that child is and what they've experienced, what they have come to school carrying around with them or lack thereof. And then again, I think we all wear glasses in our emotional sense that we see and perceive things differently based on our own biases and opinions. But that's because it's who we are and what we've experienced defies how we see things and experience things in our world. But know that interactions with others build mental models and construct them, figuratively, and lead to relationships and social development outcomes. For instance, I would like to give you an example. When kindergartners form high-quality relationships with their teachers, they function more positively during kindergarten, both socially and academically, research tells us. And this benefit of this early relationship continues with children or with the child through elementary school and even into the middle school years. So basically, how children early learn to cooperate how to cope constructively with frustration, and how to develop work habits really do tie back to their relationship with caregivers at such an early age. So consider how you are interacting with children and how you are helping to construct or destruct their mental models. Here's just a picture outlining a little bit more about this mental model figuratively. So quality of relationships with caregivers, again, can go one of two ways. Either we have high quality relationships or low quality relationships. And as a child in early childhood years, they ask themselves, am I lovable? Do I deserve attention and care? And through that, we start to construct our mental models, representing the blue area here. Now, as we move towards later stages of life or growing up, we start to turn into the mental models of others. So asking questions such as, are others responsive to me? Are they trustworthy? And think of this as, the middle school, high school, even in through your own college years, as you learn to figure people out and learn to make friends and have relationships with others. But it is all through these experiences with caregivers and with others that we develop these social developmental outcomes of academic success, popularity, the ability to manage negative emotions, and have a socially appropriate behavior. And based on these questions and how they're answered, these will either rise or certainly fall. And I'm certain that you will see these in schools, in clinics where you interact with children, of how their mental models or how they have relationships with themselves and with others will dramatically affect all these. So I'd like you to kind of going back to our reflection component that we discussed, the 4 areas. I want you to reflect on the relationships of a superstar teacher or caregiver, somebody that just stands out to you. And based on our 4 steps of reflection, the first one is, who is that person? Identify that person, describe that person, or that particular experience, that year with that teacher, or those different interactions you had with that coach. So who is that person? The second one is just describing information. What did that person actually do? What made it a high quality relationship with that person? Not just, they were nice, but how were they nice? Tell me more. Think about more. Describe on the best course of, what qualities of that person distribute, or what qualities did that person help you to become a better teacher, a better friend, a better person. Putting yourself into that position, specifically not just what they did, but give concrete and supportive examples. And finally is the apply. So how can you apply what experiences you had with this person and put them into practice? What situations? How can you grow as a learner? What are you going to actually do forward? Not just be nice to everybody, but how? And I want you to think about that. I'm going to give you my example from one of my people that I reflect on, was my math teacher. His name was Mr. Paul Rise, back in 9th grade. And I scoured looking for a picture of him, but I couldn't find one. But Mr. Rye, he was my math teacher. And bottom line was, he was also my rugby coach. Well, I could not play rugby because my parents said my math grade was not high enough. And so Mr. Rye was, essentially upset because I was a decent player. I was fast. I was aggressive. I wanted to play. So, not just from an academic standpoint, but athletically and socially, he sat down with me and tutored me, 2 or 3 times a week in math, in algebra, to help me understand after school, so that next year my grades were strong enough that I could play in rugby, high school rugby. So my person, Mr. Paul Rye, my 9th grade math teacher in Portable 136, I do remember, and describing what he did. He took the time to really spend time with me, get to know me, learn my struggles in math, how I didn't see things, how it didn't make sense to me. And I think for him, his qualities and his patience was the most outstanding that he had, and diligence of not just being there from 8 to 3 every day, but really 8 to 4 or 4:30 3 or 5. And so for me, I want to take this practice and apply it, that students that are having challenges with things, I like to sit down and I extend that to you, of how we can talk through this process and get you on your road of where you need to be, or what kind of grade you'd like to have in this class. So 4 characteristics of high quality relationships. The first one is something called attunement. And now attunement is the sensing and reading of a student's state of being, basically adjusting to one's own behavior accordingly. But a synonym of attunement is actually sensitivity. So, being sensitive to others and adjusting your own behavior to meet the needs or concerns of others. So, for instance, my example before, Mr. Rye, he adjusted his behavior of being patient with me when I could not understand how does X equal Y, the most basic things. But that his behavior also was that he stayed after school with me when he could have been doing other things, or, working on his own areas. But he was sensitive to my needs and sensitive to my nature and the inability that I had to understand. The second component of a high quality relationship is the relatedness. And relatedness applies to being close to another person. It basically entails feeling special and important to that person, or a belongingness or an intimacy. This sense of security calms negative emotions that might arise during the school day, such as anxiety or frustration. It also has an energizing effect that sparks students' enthusiasm and willingness to participate, meaning that children have a high classroom engagement and they actually want to be in school. It's a very good predictor of that, from some studies from B.F. Skinner. But I kind of give you an example here of a movie a long time ago called The Breakfast Club. And The Breakfast Club actually was formulated into, these students belonged in a group together, but they built these emotional bonds based on the experience they had to each other. So relatedness and belonging to something, even if it's something that perhaps we don't necessarily really want to do, like go to school on a Saturday, but a belonging that really fosters and enhances relationships. The third quality is supportiveness, and supportiveness is an affirmation of the other person's capacity for self-direction. The bottom line is, can you support students? Do you accept students for who they are, expressing faith, and students can regulate their behavior and try to realize goals that they set for themselves. I gave an example here of our West Georgia, our own West Georgia there, being supported by another cheerleader there. But knowing that through affirmation, we can help people move to see their own abilities and help them realize their own goals. This shows us that we ultimately believe in them and want to help them. The last category of high quality relationships is gentle discipline, and this might be one you can associate with, but it's a socialization strategy that involves explaining why a particular way of thinking or behaving is right or wrong. It's really the opposite of power assertion, which we'll get to a little bit later. But having a conversation to draw attention to a hurtful effect that a student has of misbehavior it had on others, or it's a two-way problem-solving effort where it's like, stop, ask more, why did I act that way? Why did I paint the wall red? But talking through it, not just having a one-way discipline or screaming fest, but talking about how to undo the harm, how to apologize or share. And students with caregivers who actually use that gentle discipline rather than power assertion show more positive social development in the long run. So having that conversation is critical and so important, especially with young children that are trying to understand the world and make sense of it. So not just my way or the highway, but here is why.